How's it going, lads? It's the bald boomer Biosparks. With Hardcore Classic WoW being released at some point this summer, those of you that are looking to embrace the challenge of travelling through Azeroth as a very mortal adventurer will have to consider which class to play. Today we'll be covering the Masters of Light and Shadow, the Priest class, and what it has at its disposal in the Hardcore game mode. Just before we begin, please remember to hit that like button and subscribe if you enjoy the content. So without further ado, let's get stuck straight into it. The Priest class overall is very beginner friendly. They have access to so many amazing tools to support them and other party members that it shouldn't really be too difficult for first time players to get to grips with how to play them effectively. Also, they have amazing early talents such as Spirit Tap to continue boosting their mana regeneration, making managing their mana quite forgiving. One thing that newer players will have to accept is that the Priest has access to damage as well as healing, but whenever they are in a group setting such as dungeons, they will be expected to be the designated healer because of how strong they are in that role. That being said, if you are someone who is dedicated purely to solo play, then the Priest has very formidable damage down the Shadow Tree, which gets even stronger once they unlock Shadow Form. Overall, the Priest offers both options of damage and healing, but it's important to note that the Priest's strength lies in supporting party members, rather than dealing flat out damage. Considering how straightforward the concept of playing a Priest is, I would rate it a 5 out of 5 for beginner friendly. The Priest playstyle very much focuses on one target at a time, using a range of single target offensive abilities, as well as using their wand to continuously put out consistent damage and keep their mana reserves high. Depending on what spec you ultimately choose to go for, the Priest will have a choice of using Smite, Holy Fire, Mind Blast and Mind Flare, alongside using their wands, as well as Shadow Word Pain, which is a very decent damage over time spell. Priests excel at pumping out consistent damage, and while they may get the occasional critical hit, it's not something they are specifically built around, nor necessarily need, since their damage output is so reliable. Additionally, Priests have the added bonus of using damage from spells that are either from the Holy or Shadow schools, which are types of damage that do not come across immunities from the vast majority of mobs around the world, bar a very few exceptions, which other spellcasters have to deal with. Overall, with the consistent and reliable amount of single target damage that Priests are able to deal out, I rate them a 5 out of 5 in this category. Unfortunately, compared to their very consistent single target damage, the Priest's AoE damage is practically non-existent. They have the Holy Nova talent from the Holy Tree, and that's pretty much it. The only other way you'd really have access to AoE damage is if you pick up engineering for the grenades, or specific quest rewards that give you an AoE consumable. Either way, you shouldn't consider the Priest to have any form of meaningful AoE damage whatsoever, which unfortunately gives them the tragic rating of 0 out of 5 in this category. Don't be fooled into thinking that because Priests wear cloth that means that they're a vulnerable class. They have one of the strongest toolkits available to survive the challenges of hardcore mode. The key buffs of Powered Fortitude and Inner Fire provide much needed stamina for more health, as well as extra armor against melee damage. They have Powered Shield on a relatively short cooldown, which essentially gives them a temporary health boost in the form of a shield in every fight that they engage in, and it does absorb quite a decent amount of damage. As for healing, they have Renew to provide a decent heal over time, Flash Heal for a quick burst of healing in more tight situations, and the standard heal spells for a larger chunk of health regeneration. And while not used as often, Prev Healing can provide a heal to the entire party if multiple members are injured for more situational AoE healing. For crowd control, Priests have access to Psychic Scream to fear any non-undead targets that the Priest does not want to fight against. Just bear in mind that feared mobs will most likely run into other nearby enemies and leash onto you, so make sure that you're using this as an emergency escape tool to gain distance and recover. Shackle Undead is also a very useful ability since you will face undead mobs from time to time whilst you're leveling. And Mind Control is a powerful tool that can be used to make strong targets such as elites to fight against other mobs to injure them before you attempt to take them down on your own. Priests can also dispel negative magical effects of themselves as well as beneficial magic buffs of enemies, which is something not to be underestimated. The early talent Spirit Tap is also such a huge boost to the Priest's survivability, since whenever they take down a target, they will gain a 100% boost to their spirit, increasing their mana regeneration. This in turn allows the Priest to continue casting spells to ensure that they remain healthy and in control of the combat situation. Human and Dwarf Priests in particular have access to Desperate Prayer, which is an instant cast and completely free of mana self-heal on a 10-minute cooldown. This spell is a potential lifesaver in a bad situation and is another tool for Priests to survive in hardcore mode. The only thing that Priests lack in terms of survivability is movement speed. The Priests will rely on durability and healing to get out of bad situations that they may find themselves in. However, if they are caught out of position, then they don't have a way of increasing their movement speed to escape, and that could end up in the loss of your character. Bear in mind this can be soft countered by the use of swiftness potions, which will require the use of alchemy for you to make on demand. Overall, considering that the priest only has one weakness in the form of lack of mobility, the priest is rated a very good 4 out of 5 in the survivability category. When it comes to leveling speed, priests are in a very comfortable position. They have reliable single target damage through their spells and wands, and they also have access to very early level talents such as Spirit Tap and Wand Specialization, which allows them to breeze past questing hubs with quite relative ease. A player who is able to manage their mana regeneration and consistently grind through mobs will find that leveling speed comes relatively fast as a priest, and ultimately scores a 4 out of 5 in this category. Priests are undeniably at their most potent when played in a group, since the survivability that they provide for themselves is also passed on to the members of their party. Again, Power Word Fortitude is always a powerful buff, since more health naturally provides more safety against death. Their range of shields, direct heals, and heal over time abilities mean that they're very versatile in tackling all the dungeon encounters that you'll face while leveling up, and Dispel Magic can clear off any negative magical effects from your party members, some of which can be quite dangerous at higher levels. When compared to the other healers available, priests are arguably the safest choice to bring to your dungeon group, and very hard to justify not bringing one since they can cover so many different types of support and healing for the party. The only thing they are unable to cover is removing curses and poisons, which isn't necessarily a major issue. Overall, a priest is an invaluable asset to any group with a large range of benefits that they bring and minimal drawbacks, and are easily rated a 5 out of 5 in this category. As for race choices, since hardcore mode is very focused on PvE content, it narrows down the best choices. For Alliance, far and away the best choice is unequivocally the Dwarf. Desperate Prayer and Fear Ward are just too good to pass up compared to what humans and Night Elves can offer, and Stone Skin allows the priest to remove poisons, bleeds, and diseases off themselves instantly. With so many benefits provided to the priest class by the Dwarf racials, it's hard to justify any other choice. For the Horde, there isn't really a definitive best choice. Trolls have beast slaying, which will come in handy when questing in places like the Barrens, but as mentioned before, nothing amazing. Berserking allows for on-demand faster casting, but the fact that you have to be injured to get the most of it is somewhat of a drawback as well, and the racial passive of regeneration is again nothing super amazing. Undead on the other hand will have Will of the Forsaken, which is good for any mobs that will fear you, Cannibalize for health regeneration instead of using mana to heal can be useful, and 300% more time breathing underwater is also useful when questing around marine biomes. If we were to compare the priest racials of Hex of Weakness and Shadowguard versus Devouring Plague and Touch of Weakness, I'd argue that the Undead Priest comes out ahead in terms of overall utility, but again, there isn't too much difference between Trolls and Undead in the PvE setting. The first and most important thing you need to be doing with your professions is securing your Lesser Magic Wand, which can be obtained very early. To do this, simply focus on farming humanoid mobs that drop linen cloth. By using tailoring to craft brown linen robes and disenchanting them, you'll be then able to craft your Lesser Magic Wand. The wand is an essential part of your damage rotation, and securing it as soon as possible will make your journey through the early levels go much more smoothly. You could level up your enchanting skill further using the same method up to 70 to then obtain the Greater Magic Wand if you wish. Or if you want to pass on that, you can drop tailoring and enchanting for professions of choice. In the vast majority of cases, herbalism and alchemy will provide you with a vast array of potions and elixirs that will provide you with many stat boosts, survivability, as well as utility that it's never a bad choice to use while you're leveling and far surpasses any beneficial stats enchanting will give you. Mining and engineering can be useful if you're intent on crafting several gadgets and item consumables such as grenades to assist you in your journey and can provide you with some very minor area of effect capability for you, as well as target dummies that can aggro mobs off you if you accidentally pull too much. Don't forget that cooking provides food with stats that can benefit every class while leveling, and it's very easy to get access to meat. Even fishing can also help you if you want to invest some time into that. And of course, even though you are a healer, do not neglect first aid, as a quick bandage can always save your life in a tight situation. Ultimately, when it comes to talents, there are two main paths that you can take for leveling. If you're dedicated to just engaging in solo content, then a standard shadow spec will be preferential in this case. You'll have the benefits of increased wand damage, as well as gaining Spirit Tap after every kill to get you through the early game. Later on, you'll unlock Shadow Form to give you the dual benefit of increased damage mitigation, as well as damage increase from your shadow spells. Your second option is going further down the discipline tree, and later on picking up some more holy talents to give you the benefit of being able to quest in an efficient manner, but also having the capability of very strong healing in dungeons as a primary healer. This is a path I would recommend if you're wanting to pick up some excellent items in dungeons, while also being able to ensure that you maximize the chances of success by being able to provide adequate support for the whole group. As for general tips, don't always sell your last wand when you get a new one. Wands deal damage based off what score the item says it does. For example, if your wand does fire damage, then fire elemental mobs will be immune to its damage, which can be a real pain as it affects your rotation if it's your only wand available. So make sure that you have your last wand spare that does a different school of damage, because even if it does less damage in total, it's better than having a useless wand whilst you're questing against certain mobs. Remember, as a mana user, priests are subject to the 5-second rule that prevents mana regeneration, which is why your wand is so important. Make sure you take advantage of Spirit Tap to regenerate as much mana as possible whilst keeping this rule in mind. Downranking your healing spells are an important thing to understand if you want to be efficient with your mana. If you're efficient with your spellcasting, you'll be able to cast many more spells before potentially running low on mana. This also goes for Psychic Scream, as higher ranks affect more targets, but also cost more mana. If you only need to clear a couple of mobs, then use a downranked version. Be prepared to burst down mobs that tend to run away with spells rather than using your wand. Runners can always leash more mobs onto you than you're able to handle, and the priest suffers from lack of mobility, which can lead to very dangerous situations if you become overwhelmed. Remember, the priest is a versatile class, but by no means is it invincible. And finally, is the priest a good choice? To sum it up, yes, the priest is absolutely a great choice for the hardcore challenge. As potentially the best healing class, you will always be in demand for group content whilst leveling, especially if your talent spec leads more towards healing. And whilst the priest excels at group content, the class is able to do just fine whilst leveling solo and has the shadow spec to accommodate for that with a very comfortable leveling speed. If hardcore endgame raiding is your goal, then you have to understand that in Classic the vast majority of raids will expect you to heal and not be going shadow. If you're playing as a dwarf priest, then you will also be in high demand due to being able to give tanks fear ward, and they won't have to worry about incoming fears and stance dancing them. Overall, if you're looking for a very versatile caster that is able to heal and damage and tackle a multitude of situations that suits your playstyle, I would definitely recommend the priest. And that concludes everything you should know what you're getting yourself into if you decide to play a priest in hardcore classic WoW. If you have any requests as to what class you'd like to see next, put them down in the comments below. This is the Bald Boomer Biosparks, signing out. Catch you lads next time.